Okay, welcome to my video lessons on SQL, Sequential Query Language. So this is a multi-part video tutorial, and part one is going to be all about SQL. So that is going to be this video, and then going to move to part 2A, which is setting up your SQL test server using WinLab, and then 2B is setting up your SQL server using WAMP, and then part 3 is interfacing SQL server using PHP. Okay, so with part 2A and part 2B, you either need to do one or the other. This year, my programming class, we are using WinLab, and so you'll be doing this one. All right. Okay, so let's get started right away. So first of all, let's ask the essential question: why learn SQL? Well, simply because databases and SQL run the entire world, literally. I'm not saying this is good. I'm not saying that's just how it works. It runs. It's boring. It's not very exciting, but it is so useful, and it's so important in our everyday lives that it's. I mean, you can't compete with learning Photoshop or doing Flash animation or something, or making a video game with SQL. But like I said, SQL, for better or worse, runs the entire world. Here's what I'm talking about: Hotmail and any kind of webmail service, any kind of email service, all SQL database driven. Facebook, the core principle behind Facebook is storing user data and retrieving it. eBay, SQL and databases. Twitter, SQL and databases. All banking websites, every bank in the whole world, SQL and database. Wikipedia, SQL and database. Amazon.com, Costco, and every single retailer out there, SQL and databases. Census Canada, governments, police, you name it, agriculture, all SQL and database driven. Behind each one of these services I just listed are a team of database experts and programmers, database programmers that design, maintain, and upkeep these databases for us. Okay, the second reason to learn SQL is we spent the better part of the year learning PHP, and there's really no point in learning technologies such as PHP, Cold Fusion, ASPX, ASP, Perl, and whatnot without learning SQL. Really, one goes with the other. Okay, so the next part is where is SQL used? Well, as you've seen from my above examples, SQL can be used with a web server, okay, or it can be used with or without a web server. So each one of these examples that I have here are basically database programs that are using that you go through the internet. Now, it also can be used with a desktop program that is basically independent of the web. For example, ACPAC is a very famous one. ACPAC is used by companies to do their accounting and payroll, and ACPAC is typically having a whole accounting department sharing one set of one database. So that's an example of where SQL and databases may be used without using a web server. Okay, so regarding that, SQL and databases needs to be highly secure because it is the target of many attacks. So people would love to dig their hands into the Facebook or Hotmail or eBay or a banking database. So SQL are very frequently the subject of attacks, what they call SQL injections and different types of attacks, and the people who maintain, design, and these databases need to be aware of these attacks and protect the users, basically us, from these sorts of attacks. Okay. All right. So let's move on to about SQL. Okay, now first thing is SQL. What does it stand for? SQL stands for Sequential Query Language. What exactly does that mean? Well, Sequential query means that, well, what SQL is basically, SQL is a large lump of data. So think of SQL as like a huge book with tons and tons of information in it. Now, why is it called query? Well, if you look at what query means, it means to ask a question. So what you do is you take this whole lump of data and you query it. You ask it. What you do is you extract data from it, and the data that you might extract from it is, for example, I want to extract anyone's name starting with a D and ending with a CH with the birthday of 1978. So what I'm doing is I develop a criteria query, and I'm extracting all the records in here with anyone who starts with a D and anyone's last name starts with a CH, and those people have to be born in 1978. So I look through all my data, I extract it from it. Now what I do with that data is, I want to, post it on my Facebook page. I want to display it as a web page. What I do with that data is totally up to me. But that, in a nutshell, is what SQL is about. SQL, a database is a huge repository of information. Okay, and what SQL is going to do, and what we do is we query that database. We ask questions. We design. We extract information from it, and in order to extract information from it, we need to speak a certain language. So that's why sequential query. This is actually a computer language. Now, it's kind of like HTML in that it's a very specialized language. It's not one that you could have loops and iteration. You can make decisions and have true, false, and object-oriented. No. It's not a language like that. Okay, it's not a language like PHP. It's a language kind of like HTML. It's very, very specialized. HTML is specialized in displaying images and content and text and formatting in the browser. Sequential query language is a language that is optimized for querying or extracting data from a database. So that's what SQL stands for, and that's what it is. So exactly what is SQL? Well, SQL allows many users to interface data all at the same time. All right, so think of it as like a Google Doc that's shared with millions, possibly millions of people at the same time. So, at peak hours in Facebook having over 500 million users, it is possible to have 200 or 300 million people accessing that large repository of data at the same time. And that is basically the sole purpose of having a database, is to allow anywhere from a few users to millions of users querying this lump of data at the same time, and to do it fast and to do it quickly. That is exactly what SQL does for us. Uses TCP/IP. Okay, more on that later. Okay, so the next one is what does the SQL language actually look like? So you have experience with PHP, you've done some stuff with HTML and maybe even CSS, and now in the course of 1 year, I'm introducing you a fourth language, SQL language. So let's have a look at what this looks like. So SQL language kind of looks like this. So what you see here in red are the reserved words, or the keywords for SQL, and there's a lot of them. Okay, so select, from, where, order by. Okay, so so basically this reads select all. Okay, from a database, a table called book, and look for anything where the price is greater than $100. Okay, and sort it by the title of that book. So that's what it sounds. That is what this sounds like in English. All right. So it gets more complicated down here, but let's keep things simple for now, because this is your first taste in SQL. Now let's have a look at what it actually looks like inside of a real PHP program. So here I have a PHP program, and embedded here, you recognize all the stuff here is PHP. A while loop, and you recognize the $sign. Okay, you recognize the brackets, you recognize the semicolon. Okay, what you may not recognize is this information here. Okay, this is SQL. So select all, select everything from the list of teachers table, and that's it. Okay, so I'm basically grabbing everything from that table, and what I'm doing with here, what I'm actually doing here is this is the query. All right, what you see here is this is the query. This is the question, and what you're doing is you're querying that big repository of data, and you're extracting a certain information from it. Okay, so that is a indication of what SQL actually, the language of SQL actually looks like. It's actually very simple, definitely very simple. And let's head back here. Okay, so because PHP is because SQL is meant to serve basically many different people at the same time, anywhere from a few people to a million. PHP is pretty much always installed as a program on a server. Okay, actually installed as a service. Okay, program on a server. What a service is basically a service is a program that runs in the background without actually seeing it. So here you see in front of you is a computer program, Chrome, that is running in the foreground. I can access it, I can see it. Okay, but there's what you may or may not realize is there's many programs running as services in the background that you don't see. So let's have a look at what that looks like. So I'm going to go Control-Alt-Delete and go Processes. Okay, so these are all the programs that are running on my computer behind my back, basically, that I can't see. I can see here that here is my sorry, let's go back to here. So you can see here that here's my Apache. This is my web server. Okay, and by now you should know what a web server is and how it works. And oh, and here it is. Here's my MySQL database running as a program in the background of my computer. It's just sitting there, running in the background, minding its own business, actually not doing anything. You can see that it has 0 CPU time, and sitting there basically waiting for something to do. Okay, and when I call to do something, then it's going to wake up and do what I ask it to do. So I'll show you that in a second. Now, in the case here, move this out of the way. Now you know why it's installed in servers, because it's meant to serve basically many people. What I have here is the computer I'm using as a client. Okay, it's just my personal computer. So in this case, client installation of MySQL is mostly used for testing purposes. So I don't want to test stuff on the server, because if everyone's using that server to carry about their everyday business, banking, shopping, Facebook, Twitter, I don't want to be using that same server to do my testing. So I do the testing on a different server or on a home computer. So in this case here, what you see is this is MySQL basically loaded on on my home computer. Okay, again, on a client installation for testing and development purposes. Okay, so I'm pretty much out of time for this tutorial. In the next one, I'm going to carry off where I left off, and I'm going to explain you visually exactly how PHP works. I'll see you then.